All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's about the hour. It's 8:30, and welcome to the April installment of the CEO webinar, our CEO webinar series. A couple of quick things. Just a quick reminder, we got a lot of people online here. I've currently got everyone muted. If you do have a question, we'd like to invite that question, and we'd ask that you would use the chat feature. That'll help us keep from having to manage a lot of background noise for everybody. But if you would do that, that would greatly help everything. And it would give us a written record of the question so we can share that when we share the slide and recording later. So glad you're all here. A couple of other notes about Sean and I. We've got some Q&A time at the end. So we kind of block this as an hour block, but we plan for 40, 45 minutes worth of content. So we allow appropriate amounts of time so we don't bleed into your next appointment. So thank you all for being here. We're glad to have you and look forward to engaging you with this content. Sean, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate everybody being here. Picked up a little bit of echo there, maybe. Kevin, I think you're off, or you're on mute now, so maybe that was it. So thank you very much for being here, everybody. I'm going to leave my camera on this time. I think that I'll do a little bit better job of presenting by doing that. I usually turn it off, but I'm going to leave it on this time. The subject for today is the top 10 sales analytics for CEOs to follow. So I'm going to be going along. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to send a chat message to Kevin or to everybody. I am not going to be able to look at chat during my presentation. It's just not going to pop up. So don't send one directly to me. I'll try to look at the end of the presentation and catch those that do that. So this presentation is about what should data analysis for C-level management, so CEO, CFO, CIO, whatever that might be in your organization, what they should be looking at. This is not a presentation about what your sales manager or your vice president of sales should be familiar with. So sales management, or I'm sorry, yeah, so C-level managers are about managing by exception. And this is very, very important. You don't want to manage all the details. You want to let those details be managed by your sales VP or your sales manager. Your sales manager should be intimately familiar with all your deals during a one-on-one conversation. So almost this presentation is a list of analytics that you would review with your salespeople, but definitely maybe just with your sales manager to talk about what's going on. Explain this to me. I see some problems here. So this is your ability to manage the rest of the organization through them. You should be looking for overall patterns when you're talking with your VP of sales. All of these you should be able to create within your CRM. And I'm going to be really blunt. If you can't, get a different CRM. There are, last count that I saw was 247 different CRMs on the planet. Some of them are really, really good. Some of them probably are less than really good. So I'm pretty insistent. If you can't do this in your CRM system, then you're paying for the wrong CRM system. Let's just be really blunt. So most CRMs will allow you to have analytics, not all. And they'll also allow you to click through to see the data behind the analytics. So you can click in and it actually will show you the opportunity or the activity that you're interested in. If it doesn't do that, once again, get a new CRM. Some of the analytics that are in this list will require you to add new data elements or new fields into your CRM. Once again, if you can't do that in your CRM system, then you have a problem. Some of these analytics will also require you to synchronize your calendar, be that Microsoft or Google, to your CRM system. Once again, to me, this is table stakes. All CRM should be able to do this in the third decade of the 21st century. All of these metrics, though, require that you make your salespeople maintain a proper regimen within your CRM. Garbage in equals garbage out. So if they're not keeping it up to date, you're not going to get the value out of these analytics. But because this is not a webinar on how to select or which CRMs are the best CRMs on the planet, I did all of these within Excel. So literally, I exported the data out of a CRM system, changed all the reps' names, and I have a premier group of reps. When you see this, my reps that work for me at this company, you're going to be amazed at the quality of the people that I have working for me. It is amazing. You'll see here in a few minutes. But I changed all their names, changed all the names of the customers, all that, so that there wasn't anything. I also rearranged the accounts so I could actually bring up some things that might be interesting for you to look at. So, but everything I did in a spreadsheet. So at a bare minimum, You should be able to recreate all of these by exporting data out of your CRM system, applying some filters, applying some pivot tables, and some graphs from your favorite spreadsheet, be that Google spreadsheet or be that Excel, and you should be able to see all these as well. But you should be able to do all this in your CRM. Let's get started. At the end, I'm going to talk about the one analytic that you shouldn't track, but I see so many VPs tracking. I see so many CEOs tracking. It's the one analytic that is almost guaranteed that if you spend a lot of time focusing on it and you prioritize it, you're probably going to lose money. So we'll talk about that at the end. So that's my little teaser to stay on board. Don't get lost. Don't fall asleep. I'll try to keep it interesting so you don't fall asleep. The first one is the one that almost everybody on this webinar this morning has not heard of. It's called customer interaction hours. So what are customer interaction hours? I have been using this metric for better than 2 decades. I'm going to say 3 decades. It was developed by some management friends of mine at the time, some of my bosses at the time. It was a way to solve the problem of quality meetings. How do you measure quality meetings? Because let's face it, in sales, quality meetings are better than bad quality meetings or poor quality meetings, and they are better than no meetings at all. So we wanted some way to create a metric that actually tracked this. And this is what we've been using for a long time. In B2B sales or business to business sales, the longer the meeting and the more people that are in the meeting, the better the meeting will be. Let me just say an example of that. If I have one person in a meeting for 30 minutes, it may be a great meeting, but it could also be how are you? Let's catch up. Things good? How's the family? And then you walk out. So it's a good meeting. I'm not saying it's a bad meeting, but it's not a great meeting, right? So that meeting is not as important, not as good as the 10 people in the meeting from the customer sticking around for 2.5 or 3 hours, going over a wide variety of issues that are pertinent for the implementation of your product at that customer, talking about competitors, talking about who's going to make the decision, side talk between the 10 people of, say, hey, Joe, that was really cool, right? All of that kind of a meeting, that's fantastic. Obviously, much better than the hi, how are you? Let's catch up on the kids meeting that I just talked about before. So we want to have a metric, a way of analyzing that together and make sure that makes sense. And that's what customer interaction hours is all about, is how do you analyze this information? And because I've been using this for nearly 3 decades, I have learned that if you have 8 really great meetings, 8 customer interaction hours per week, the likelihood of you hitting quota is extremely high. In fact, I'll be honest, I don't know that anybody has not hit quota for all the years that I've been seeing this metric being used, if they had 8 per week on a regular basis. So it's a very important metric. It's one I consider to be the most leading indicator of future success in your pipeline, your salespeople. So let's talk about this. A typical meeting is 3 people or fewer. 1, 2, or 3. That's a typical meeting. And a typical meeting, if you think about it, even when salespeople call on you in your place of business, is about an hour. You book about an hour. That's a typical. I'm going to sit down. Let's talk these things over. Let's review what's going on, or let's make this presentation. You pretty much block an hour. Even today, this meeting today is an hour long. So that's a typical meeting in your life. It's a typical meeting in your prospect's life. So one customer interaction hour is about an hour with 3 people or less. So I actually put the Excel formula. Actually, I think it's the Google Sheets formula. So I think it's very similar though to the Excel formula. Round up the amount of time, divide that by 75 for 75 minutes. So you had to put that number in by minutes. That times or multiplied by, round up the number of attendees divided by 3. So let's do just a real quick analysis of the 2 things that I just talked about. I have one person for half an hour. So 1 hour, 60 minutes, or 30 minutes divided by 75, that's 1, rounded up, you round up that to 1, times or multiplied by, round up, number of attendees, 1, divided by 3. So that's, once again, that's 1. 1 times 1 equals 1. You get 1 interaction hour for that, Mr. Rep. It's great. You had a great meeting. Fantastic. You caught some really good stuff. You talked about some things. Customer thought of you a little bit longer. It's nothing special. Nothing to write home to mom about. So let's look at another example. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the same basic example. 60 divided by 75. So this is really putting the numbers in. times, round up 2. In this case, I had 2 people in the meeting. So once again, 2 people in a meeting for about an hour, you get 1 hour. That's all you get. But you have this really great meeting, 180 minutes. So 3 hours with 10 people in the room. This is an amazing meeting. Let me think about this, what this could mean to your business, your personal business, if you had this. And you probably have had this once, a 3-hour meeting, 10 people in the meeting, lots of interaction, lots of questions. You probably had to do, or the rep didn't even go alone, but the salesperson had to do a lot of prep for that meeting, had to get a lot of information gathered before the meeting, had to practice their presentation, had to practice the flow of information between the various people that went to the meeting with him, because nobody's going to talk for 3 hours, not even me. And on the other side, you have 10 people. That means I probably have 20 or 30 or 40 questions to follow up on, concerns that maybe came up that I have to go now do a one-on-one on with that person. So this is a really big meeting. In fact, this could potentially be the biggest deal of your year, or of that salesperson's year. So in this case, we're going to round up 2.4. So 180 divided by 75, 2.4 rounds up to 3. Round up 3.3, 10 divided by 3 is 3.3. That's 4 times 3 is 12. So you would get 12 customer interaction hours for that meeting. Now, I told you earlier, 8 is a really good week. That meeting is going to be the foundation of the week. Let's just face it. Probably is going to take them a full week to prep for the meeting and follow up on the meeting. You want to reward that kind of meeting. You want to encourage your salespeople to do that. So that's why we want to have this. In fact, this is the meeting where you're going to call that person out on their weekly sales call that you do with your team. And my team that I'm going to have, you'll see that I have 11 people. One of my salespeople is Bob Hope. And I might say, Bob, how did that meeting go? That was awesome. You got 12 customer interaction hours. I'm going to call that out. I want to make a big deal about that. So that's important. So you're going to see my team now. So let's look at the chart. After every one of the analytics I do, I'm going to show you the chart and how to interpret it. So here is the last week. So you'll see I have an all-star cast for my sales team. This is a fantastic sales team. I would love to work on it. And in case you don't recognize all the names, all these names are great actors, great actresses, great comedians that unfortunately have passed away. So I'll never get to work with any of these people. But I have an all-star cast here. And you can see Bob Hope nailed it. He had 14 customer interaction hours last week. He nailed it. He had a great week. Great, Bob Hope. Let's stand up and do that. That red line going across, that's 8. That's the goal for everybody. So, and when I look at this chart, I'm going to kind of call out Betty and Bob and John Wayne and say, guys, you did great. Maybe I'll call up Gilda and Farah as well. Talk how great they did. Tell us the story of how that meeting went, or how your week went last week. That sounds great. Or I'm going to see them in the hallway. Or maybe it's because I'm the CEO. Maybe I'll pick up the phone. I'll call them if they're remote. Now I'm going to look at Dean Martin there. And I'm going to go, gee, what's up with Dean? Maybe I know that Dean got sick this week. That's okay. I mean, you can't do 8 every week. I'll just tell you that, right? Maybe Dean went on vacation. He took a long weekend with his wife. I don't know. Sounds like Dean would do. Also sounds like something Dean would do if he just couldn't show up to work a little bit too. But that's beside the point. So we have this great team. Some of them didn't make their number on a weekly basis, and some made their number easily. When you're looking at the week, just last week, what you really are trying to do is your team on the whole executing? So I have 11 salespeople here. 11 times 8 is 88. So I want to know, well, by adding up all those numbers, did I get above 88 hours, 88 customer interaction hours? In this case, I know that I did 16% above that. I did the math on the side. I didn't show it on the slide. I apologize, but it's 16% above that. But now let's look at the month. At the month level, I'm really now focusing not so much on the team. I'm looking at the individuals themselves. And once again, that red line has now moved because now we got 4 weeks of data. And so I'm looking for 32 as my number. That's the goal to hit. So that's that red line going across. And I see that, look, Dean, you made it. So Dean was probably just sick or whatever that week, that he had a bad week, or maybe he just had a bad week. He might have just had cancellations, right? He can't really deal with that. So I look at this, I see Bob Hope, you're still nailing it. Fantastic. Congratulations on the week. Got a lot of activity going. You must be a busy guy. Jerry, you did great too. John, man, you're still hitting out of the park. Good job. Congratulations. I look at Betty and I'm going, wonder what's wrong with Betty. But she's close. It was close enough, maybe. So she's at least being active. She didn't quite hit her 32, but that's probably not enough to beat her up. Jimmy, yeah, maybe he also was out for a week. Maybe this is July and he was out for a week as well. So, because he was on vacation. So maybe I won't beat Jimmy up, but I'm going to watch that. I'm going to pay attention to that because the next analytic is really going to drive this home, and that is 12 weeks. So now I look at this list and I go, Betty, you're still not doing quite well. Is there something wrong? Is there something we can help you with? Right. So I'm not really looking for this as a beat them up kind of a tool. This is a tool where I am looking at this information and going, Betty, do you need help? Do you need help getting some more meetings? Tell me your script when you talk to people. How are you following up? Are you asking for bigger meetings? Are you inviting other people into your meeting with your customers? So you're already saying, hey, Joe, we're going to have a meeting next Monday. Do you mind if Jerry comes along with that meeting? And can you invite Jerry in accounting to come over to that meeting as well? Are you doing those types of activities? Maybe Betty's not doing that. Right? Maybe Dean is also not doing, because I only see Dean is now below the mark to hit. And once again, this is 12 weeks, so we're looking for 96 for that number. Gilda is knocking it out of the park though for this last quarter. So we're looking for good stuff from Gilda coming forward. I expect that everybody is going to do well on their quotas with this kind of a number, with kind of an activity. So this is the chart that I actually say spend more time looking at this chart than everything else, because this is a pre-leading, pre-indication of what your revenue is going to look like going forward. But let's keep going. Number 2, pipeline. Pipeline for this month, this quarter, these 12 months. How much revenue do you have per stage in the coming periods? Now, you probably should have the same metric, and I'm not going to show it multiple times like I just did because I don't want to bore you, but you should probably have this metric filtered and factored by stage or commit or most likely an upside. So there's a variety of things that I would actually have for a CEO that I was actually going to work with that we would set up that was important for their particular business. Some people will tell you, if you read books, if you read too much on LinkedIn, and please read LinkedIn, especially the stuff that Kevin and I put out, but some people advise you to have 3x your quota in pipeline. Just be careful about that. If that's a 12-month goal, sure, 3x makes sense. But if it's a 1-month pipeline and you have 3x, I'll be honest, if I'm running your sales team, we won't have next month. So this is April, next month. If I'm looking at next month's numbers for any of the teams that I manage, we don't need 3x because we're not going to lose 2/3 of our deals. We just aren't, right? Because the way you're going to go through the stages with me, the processes with me, you're not going to lose that many. We're going to eliminate all those ones we're going to lose already, right? When I say this is what we're going to close next month, that's pretty close to what we're going to close. Now that deal may slip to June, but it's not going to go away, right? So be careful of that 3x quota. It gets thrown around a lot. And I've even heard people say, no, you have to have 4, you have to have 5x. Okay, that's fine if that's a year number. But if that's just a quarter or a month, that's probably kind of silly. So this is my favorite way to show this particular analytic. On the left, you'll see revenue. On the right, you'll see number of deals. So it's a double chart kind of thing. I think there's a special name for this kind of chart. So the things that are on the right are the number of deals that are at each one of those stages. The things that are on the left are on the revenue. Sorry about that. Somebody sent me a text. So on the bottom, I have the 6 stages of this sales process. And I'll be honest, I use the sales stages almost every time I help a customer. There's sometimes I'll add another one into this mix, but these are the 6 that kind of drive everything. Discovery, scoping, economic buyer meeting, really important. People don't track that enough. Validation event, that's a demo or POC, proof of value. You should do POCs, you should do proof of values. Business case and final proposition, and then negotiation and close. So those are the 6 steps of my standard process. That's what I implemented at this company here with Bob and Gilda and Farah as my salespeople here. So I start off discovery. Wow, got a lot of revenue there. You'll see that it immediately starts coming down. The number of deals comes down as well as the value of those deals. So the blue line is the revenue, all the other lines, the count of the opportunities, and the factored revenue, of course, is revenue as well. But the red line is the count of the opportunities. Should have explained that before in a second, which is on the right-hand side. So you can see we drop off a lot from discovery to scoping. Totally logical. It better do that, right? Discovery means I'm putting everything in. I think there's a heartbeat of this customer. Oh, I dug into a little bit. We don't have an opportunity there to sell them anything. Let's take them off the list. So we should lose a lot in that process. That just makes sense. And then we go along, we should see a little bit of a drop for economic buyer meeting because we didn't get to that stage after we scoped it out. We looked at it a little harder. Yeah, it makes sense. We're not going to have as many. And then we have a validation event, which is a PO, proof of value or proof of concept. Then we do the final business, then we do a business case with the final proposition, and then we negotiate the deal and close it. So as I look at this, I see some problems. There's at least some things I want to be concerned with. Now, if I'm the CEO, I know what's going on. I've watched this over and over again across the years, but you'll notice that the number of opportunities, that red line, went up at the validation event, right? It seems strange that you have more deals there than you did in this previous step, the economic buyer meeting. That's interesting. And then also you notice that there's a business case and final proposition. That number was higher as well, even though it did go down after the validation event. So what you don't know from looking at this and what the CEO will be able to say and recognize is that I know that 4 months ago, we did a major show. We did a major thing, a major marketing event. We got a ton of deals came in the more. And that's those deals. They are now working their way through the system. Kind of like when you look at the picture of the snake that ate the pig, it's working its way through the system. This is what's kind of happening too. This is our pig moving away through our snake, right? So it's working its way through the system. That's fine. So as a CEO, I'm going, well, I like that level of revenue. I'm probably not going to have that level of revenue in the future because I'm not feeding the snake as much as I want to. I'm not feeding my business as well as I need to. So maybe that's call up the VP of marketing here and say, we need to do a little bit more marketing because I like what we did before. I can see that we're getting return on that investment, on that marketing investment. Okay. So we can work our way through it. So this is a great chart. You should be looking at this chart all the time as you run your business. Every CEO should see this probably once a week. Number 3, salesperson stage analysis. It is a best practice in business B2B sales to track your opportunities by stage. You saw that I was doing in the previous slide. Interestingly, though, in Sales Acceleration, the company that Kevin and I are both aligned with, did a study, and they said, how many of you, and this study was at the time, I think it was over 3,000 companies. How many companies actually manage their sales process in a structured way with stages? Only 8% or 92% said they didn't do that. So this is a big mistake that small companies are making. So if you learned one thing in this presentation, implement this in your CRM. Implement stage analysis into your CRM.
Hey, Sean, got a question.
Yes.
Before we move on here. It's good. It's related to the actual stages. And the question is, what tactics do you use to get the economic buyer meeting, or step 3? I thought that was a good tactical kind of application kind of question.
That is a great. Can I hold that if you don't mind? Because I'm going to talk about the economic buyer a lot in number 8, number 9. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. And I'm going to talk about that. So let me say that. And if I don't answer that, then Kevin, let's nail that, run that up, because I think that's a great question. That is a really good question. Thank you. And thank you to whoever asked that question. So it's valuable to track deals by raw revenue. You saw that was that blue line. By factored revenue, that was that yellow line, the previous one, and the number of opportunities. That's all good. But we want to do it by salesperson, not just by the overall look, but by salesperson. Because we want to see how people are doing. We want to help them with their problems. We want to get ahead of their problems. And as the CEO of the company, or as the CFO, or as any leader of the company, you want to try to get ahead of where your team is having problems. Not so much that you can penalize them, because if you have that kind of attitude, you're not going to have your salespeople, especially when you have a premier list of salespeople like I have at my company, these 11 people that you see listed. If you treat them badly, they're going to go somewhere else. But we definitely want to help them. We want to give them encouragement. We want to say, are you struggling in this area? And that's what these metrics are all about. So I look here, and you've looked at this data a little bit now, so you can see what's going on. Bob Hope, you're killing it, right? I mean, he's got over $7 million in pipeline. That's just fantastic. Gee, let's hope all this analysis holds up as we look at all the analytics. That's a hint that maybe it doesn't. But Bob Hope, you're killing it. John Wayne, just doing great. Great job. Betty, you're last. Wonder what's going on with Betty. Now you might know Betty. You might understand what Betty's all about. You might understand that maybe she's new or whatever. That's fine. So you might see that and say that makes total sense. But for me, looking at it with not knowing when these reps were hired or what their stage are in their career, that one would cause me concern, especially since she is less than a third than what Bob Hope has done. So there's something going on there, and maybe it means that Bob Hope has too many accounts. That might be one of the things that you learn from this analysis as well. But there's a couple other things that cause me concerns. Let's look at Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart, just so you know, is the fourth one from the bottom there, in case you can't see. And Jimmy, I love Jimmy as an actor, but I'm not sure that he's making it as a prospector, right? Because he has essentially zero deals, so few deals that I can't see it on the chart. He has zero deals in discovery, that very first stage. It would be blue. You can see blue in most of the other ones. Jimmy has no blue. Now, I did that intentionally for this presentation. Jimmy, the person behind Jimmy, really does have, but Jimmy has no blue in this presentation. So I'd be looking at Jimmy and say, what's going on? The zero is a bad sign. That means you're just not doing any prospecting, right? You're not trying to find new leads. So Jimmy's going to run out of revenue here soon. Or maybe he doesn't like CRM system. He's not doing the CRM system. Maybe that's another thing. Same thing with Jerry. Jerry's got some, but he doesn't have a lot. Jerry's got a lot in scoping. That big red bar. Jerry Lewis, by the way, is the fifth from the bottom there. He's got a lot in scoping. Is he having a problem? Is he not getting the resources that he needs to make that scoping stage go fast? Maybe because of your company, you need to apply some more resources to him. So maybe that's a problem, right? Gilda, right above Jerry. Wow, she has a lot in business case and final proposal. Really? Is that a problem? Is that hard to do in your company? Because you would think that, creating that final proposal would be something relatively fast. Maybe she's also not getting the support from the company, or maybe you've got problems with the tools in your company. We'll check that out in the future one. If I look at Sydney all the way at the bottom, then I would say, Sydney, man, that just looks great, man. Nice and even, approximately the same bars. Maybe a little bit too big on number 5, business case and final. But, it's a pretty good distribution of deals across the board. I kind of like that. Now look at Ruby. And if you don't know Ruby, she's one of the great actresses of all time, and especially in the early history of motion pictures. But Ruby is got this amazing amount of discovery, and she has fewer things. And maybe that's okay, because maybe you know that Ruby is brand new in your organization. So she is doing a lot of prospecting. She hasn't brought things forward, but maybe she's just having challenges getting to the next stage. You'd have to investigate that yourself. But you can see a lot by looking at this chart. And you can even see more when we overlay it by the number of opportunities as compared to the amount of revenue. So I put them side by side here. So it's the same people, same order, all that. However, it's the number of opportunities on the right, and now it's the amount of money, amount of revenue in each one of those opportunities as a thing. And I look at that and I go, wow, Betty, that's interesting. She has a lot of opportunities. She has roughly 80 just by looking at that scale of this chart, but she has very little revenue. That's a little concerning. Bob, you're still blowing out. Lots of opportunities, lots of revenue. Looks good, kind of even. Bing Crosby, the same thing with you. Sydney, wow, all the way at the bottom. Sydney Poitier, lots of opportunities, but not a lot of revenue for all those opportunities. I wonder if there's a problem there, right? Is he not able to move those forward, right? Jerry Lewis, look at Jerry right in the middle of the chart. Jerry Lewis doesn't have a lot of opportunities. In fact, he's what, third? So we got Jimmy Stewart and Dean Martin below him. And I guess John Wayne's below him too. But Jerry Lewis, not a lot of opportunities, but he has a lot of things, and they all seem to be stuck in the second stage. Oh man, that really scares me a lot, especially since I got a lot of revenue in the second stage, but not. And sure, there's more opportunities in the second stage, but it's not like it's the big difference that we see on the other side. Another thing, lots of things I can learn about my sales team, what's not working, what is working, by looking at these two charts side by side and trying to figure out what's going on, trying to look for patterns, right? Which is what a CEO should do. Now, finally, let's look at factored revenue. So factored revenue is a percentage that you put against each deal. So I'm not very confident I'm going to put 10% on that deal. I'm really confident I'm going to put an 80% on that deal, right? You multiply those together, you get a factored revenue. And the first thing that comes to mind is Bob Hope. Poor Bob here. Now he's dropped down to $2.5 million on a factored revenue. Remember, he had a massive pipeline, massive number of deals. What's going on? John Lane, on the other hand, just like you would expect with John Lane, he's like, I got this thing nailed. We're going to get these deals. His numbers are quite big. He actually grew the percentage of everybody else. So you say, okay, John, do I trust you? Do I not trust you? Kind of do that analysis as well. Same thing with Jimmy. Jerry is still stuck. He still has all those deals there. Sydney, you can see he's got a little bit of stuck now in number 5, right? The business case, that orange bar. Once again, more learning you can do. Do your reps need help? Do your reps need some assistance in getting some things done? The one that really bothers me in all this is it just pops out. Bing Crosby, and he's a great singer, but Bing Crosby, look at that big turquoise bar, number 6, negotiation and close. Is he having problems getting deals closed? Maybe you need some help. Okay, let's keep going. Yes.
Yeah, I've got a question before we move on. This is from Susan. What are the key learnings behind the 8%? It's much lower than I expected, and no head of sales to formalize the sales process. CEOs not having prior formal sales management exposure. Marketing conceptually doesn't support each of the stages of the sales processes. So quite a few questions there in the chat, but
yeah, so I'm just gonna, so this literally is why Kevin, you and I can help most companies, right? So the biggest thing that happens when Kevin and I come into a company is we find this out all the time. In fact, I think I can think of one customer that has a decent job that I've ever had that did a decent job of doing stage breakout, right? Or actually governing by stage and having rules as to where the opportunity sits in that stage. They may have the stages because every CRM system kind of has that kind of built in right now when you buy the CRM system. But do they actually govern it? Do they actually work it? Do they actually have rules? Do they actually have repercussions if you do it wrong? This is one of those biggest things that we do when we fix the problem. And yeah, it's really, really bad. Most small companies just struggle doing this because they don't have the strong sales management person in place. When Kevin and I come in, we fix those problems, we get them fixed. I shouldn't say we fix them, we make them get fixed. And so we help them develop those strategies, develop those rules, develop those best practices. And then as we leave our clients, as we transition away from our clients, we make sure that those systems are there to make sure that happens after we've left the company. So great comment, Susan. I think that was Susan that said that. Thank you very much for that. And this also is something that's, because we're tracking deals by stage, we can try to figure out where things are stuck. And this is a big deal for a CEO. Where is my company, my organization, making it hard for my salespeople to operate? And where are salespeople by their individual skills not doing well, and I need to unstuck these opportunities? Now, as a rule of thumb in B2B sales, I'm going to start off when I implement this system, I'm going to look at 60 days. I'll modify that 60 days. I'll talk about how I do that in another slide or two, but I'm going to look at 60 days per stage. And we'll figure out if that's the right number, or I'll do some analysis ahead of time if you have some decent data. But 60 days is a good number that I'm going to start at. If any deal gets longer in a single stage for longer than 60 days, it's probably a problem. And I want to know what that problem is. Once again, from a CEO perspective, I am managing by exception, right? I want my CEO to look at this and say, what is causing problems? So management by exception, not managing all the details. If the goal of a metric is that a particular person is struggling, then we just have to do extra training or assistance, or maybe we have to fix something in the company. And so we'll talk about that in a second as too. So for this one, you may have to evolve this analytic over time. And I'm going to talk about this in like 2 or 3 slides, because remember that 60 days may not be right for your business. And I'm not saying it is. It's just a good starting point. And for the data that I created for this presentation, 60 works out pretty well. So same 11 salespeople here. But this time we have a filter on the data. So it's the same basic chart that we showed before, just a couple slides ago. However, I took out every deal where we have been at this stage. And once again, your CRM needs to track this. And if it doesn't, get a new CRM, because this is important. You're at this stage for 60 days or longer. So we look at Sydney all the way at the bottom, and he only has some deals in discovery. That's fine. And he's trying to figure out what's going on at that account. That's perfectly fine. Same thing in Ruby. She's got a bunch of deals that are stuck at 60 days. That's perfectly fine. She's trying to figure out what's going on. It's discovery, right? John Wayne, now that one has a lot of concerns for me. Why is John have so many deals, so much revenue tied up at business case and final proposal? That's a big red flag. This is right before we close. That's a big red flag. I go all the way up to Bob Hope. Is Bob having problems with that economic buyer meeting? And this leads into that earlier question, Kevin, but I'm going to hold it off just a little bit longer. Is Bob having problems with the economic buyer meeting? And how do we help him with that? Dean Martin, you're kind of stuck all the way through, bud. What's going on? Farah, you're also stuck at that business case and final proposal. Now I'm starting to see a problem. I look at this chart and I see lots of orange, lots of big oranges, right? So is there a problem with the tools in your company that's causing this problem? Or is this a problem in training in general for your 11 salespeople that you have? Jerry is stuck at scoping. Is he not getting the support that he needs to get this done? Why does he have so many in scoping that are at this level, have so much revenue, has $500,000 plus, 600,000 roughly, that's stuck in scoping? Why is that? Because scoping is a team exercise where you can try to figure out what's going on with the customer, and maybe he needs resources to help for that. So those are things that I'm starting to look for a problem. Okay, so now let's take the next stage. Previously, we saw an analytic that showed the stuck opportunities by salesperson, right? That'll give you some indication of the salesperson is good at that. This analytic is giving you an understanding of, is there something in your sales process that is throttling? I started to ask those questions last analytic, but now I'm looking at this next analytic and I'm saying, okay, is this a problem? Also, should we change so that stuck opportunities start to be looked at 30 days or 90 days or 45 days? What's the right number for your business and specifically? So this is across all of your salespeople. Average time of stage duration. How long has every deal been in that stage across all the deals that are open? So you want to look at this on a regular basis. You don't have to look at it every day, but on a regular basis, every month, every quarter, and figure out where should my stucks be and do I have problems? Now, earlier I pointed out that there were so many people that were stuck at 5, business case and final proposal. Yeah, look at it. It's 50, probably better than 50 just by looking at the bar chart here, right? So how many people are stuck there? Yes, Kevin.
Good time. There's a couple questions in the chat here, and there's one related to specifically this from Darren. It says, curious if or how this changes between longer sales cycles versus shorter sales cycles, and larger versus smaller purchase prices. So the same kind of
absolutely right, absolutely, Darren, because you really do want to look at this chart to give you an indication of, is it always going to be 50? Well, in that case, that's fine, but it's not, right? So let's apply some company resources to get that 50 down to 40, down to the average kind of across the board. Kind of look at the other ones are all about 40, except for validation, bet, and business case and final proposal. So maybe as a company, we should be focusing on what tools, what techniques we can do to get everybody better at those 2 activities. That will shorten my sales cycle. By just looking at this, I would say that you have a sales cycle that's roughly 240 days long, right? Maybe a little bit longer, right? Because I got an average of 40 just about in every one, and a little bit longer in validation event and final business case. So, and 6 stages in my process. So I would say about a 240-day sales cycle, and that's fine, because that's just how this business is operating. That's perfectly fine. But how do we improve it? How do we make it go faster, especially when it's on us? So that business case and final proposal, well, okay, that's probably us, right? That's probably us not giving the best proposal up front, not being explanatory enough, having to go back and forth too often during that process, whatever the case might be, right? So this is a really good chart. Once again, this is a chart you look at once a month, maybe once a quarter from a CEO perspective. Average days by stage to close by a salesperson. Do you really know how long it takes to close your deal? I just kind of alluded to it before, my last statement, right? Darren's question kind of alluded to that as well. Are your salespeople not giving true visibility though in the true buying decision of your prospects? So when you talk to your prospect, you talk to your customer after they sign, and you sit down and you say, hey, tell me about your process of how you discovered this, how you decided that you needed to invest some money in this area of your business, and you gave me the order. By the way, thank you very much for that order, but how long did it take you to come through that process? And you find out they were working on it for 18 months. But your average sales cycle is much less than 18 months. That means your sales cycle is lower than the customer's buying cycle. And that's good, because if it's longer, that's a problem. But if it's too short, then you are stealing most of your deals late in the buying process. And potentially you are over discounting to steal those deals. If you have deals that close really fast and everybody else takes a long time, well, what's my discount problem happening here? Are we just having a hard time with doing that? And for this metric, we want to change the filter. So all the other ones were for open deals. This one is on closed deals, right? So we're going to change the filter in the spreadsheet or in the CRM system, look at closed deals. So closed deals age. It's a really great metric. And this is how I like to display it. What's my average by rep? And what's my max by rep? And I see some problems. I see some issues right away. It just pops right out to me. Betty is really short. She's closed some deals, right? Obviously, because otherwise she wouldn't be on this list. But she's really short compared to Jerry, compared to Bing, right? She's less than half of Bing, less than half of Jerry and Gilda, right? That causes me some concerns, because maybe Betty offers too quick of a discount. She joins too late in the sales process or customer's buying process. And now she's asking, just give me the order and I need to, I'll give you this great discount. Bob, pretty good. Farrah's pretty good. John's pretty good. You know, maybe Gilda and Jerry Lewis and Jimmy Stewart, maybe why does it take so long? What's taking so much longer than Farrah and Dean and Bob? So maybe we have that discussion, right? We start to understand that. So I'm 6 in, I got 4 to go. Largest 10 deals this quarter. This is the only analytic that I suggest that C-level people, CIOs, CFOs, CEOs look at when it has names of prospects. The only time you should ever look at it. 80% of your revenues probably come from 20% of your opportunities. And let's face it, you're the CEO of this company. You better know what has to be done to close those deals that are your biggest deals, right? You're probably going to be intimately involved in that. So here's our customer list, our top 10 deals. I think everybody on this call would love to have this as your top 10 deals. You probably would love to have this kind of revenue as well. You'll notice that on this list, and this is how I always show this metric, I have a WCML up. That is the salesperson communicating to me, the CEO, if they're committing to this deal. By the way, W means win, C means commit, ML means most likely, and UP means upside. So Bing, General Motors, 1.5 million. You going to close that? Well, he says, yeah, I commit. I'm going to commit that. We're going to get that deal. I feel really comfortable with that. Jimmy Stewart's not as comfortable for that 1.3. It's most likely for Boeing. That's okay. At least we know what's going on. We can have a conversation about what do we have to do to make that happen. Jimmy Stewart's also, he got 1.3 million at Federal Express. And hey, that's an upside deal, boss. I'm sorry, man. That's an upside. Well, what do we have to do? How do we have to get that done? Because that 1.3, that's a pretty big deal. That's an important deal for this company. And by the way, Jimmy, why is it only 30%? Right? Is that accurate? What's up with that? And because you say an upside at 40%, or I'm sorry, most likely at 40% for Boeing. What's your difference there? Why are you more confident on that one than the other one? You don't want to do this on every single deal. Your VP of sales, yeah, he can do this on every single deal. Your sales manager, but you as the CEO of the company, you just want to look at your top 10, your biggest 10 deals that you're working on, and you're going to want to get involved in every one of these. Just fact of life. And I'm not going to tell you not to do that. So because these are the deals that are going to drive it, right? So you don't want to ask questions about each one of these. You're going to want to have this list. You might want to have this list on your cell phone. Economic buyer. So one of the biggest reasons that deals do not close or are lost to the big competition, which is no decision, is because your team is not having conversations with the economic buyer. So there was an earlier question, Kevin, that I put off about how do you get that economic buyer meeting. And I do a lot of training on this, so I'm not going to do this justice, especially in the 16 minutes, 15 and a half minutes that we have left in this presentation. But the way you get to the economic buyer is to have some of the other tools that I'm going to talk about right after that, right after this slide, and that is by metrics. Because the economic buyer meeting has to include metrics. And a metric is simple as this. And I'm kind of pre-leading what I'm going to talk about in 2 slides. But I being the customer, I want to reduce my costs by 25% or whatever that metric is. What is the reason they're buying this thing to begin with? Right? Okay, thank you very much, champion, coach on this deal, the guy in charge, project manager at the customer. Thank you very much for telling me that you want to decrease costs by 25% in this one area of your business. If I do that, will you buy? Pause, long pause. He'll say yes. Great. Can I talk to your economic buyer? Because not that I don't trust you, and I do. I really do. I trust you. But you're not going to sign this, right? You're really not going to sign this deal. You don't have the authority to make this happen, do you? He'll say, oh, sure. I've been empowered to make this happen. Really? You have the ability to move money from one budget to another. Well, no, I have to get Joe to sign off. Oh, can I go be Joe? Because look, I'm going to spend a lot of money. I'm going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to spend a lot of effort convincing you that I can get that 25%. I kind of just want to meet Joe and just make sure that he's on board with rearranging the budget so that you can buy this, because this is not something that's in your budget. This is not something you plan to buy at the beginning of the year. And I just got to make sure before I spend all this money on my side that really happens. And eventually he's going to say yes. He really will. If you keep pushing it and just say, look, I can't continue. I can't invest in your company unless I get somebody say that they will rearrange the budget to make this happen, because it's not in the budget. It never is. So the economic buyer has the ability to move the money from between budget categories or create a budget out of slush fund. That's what an economic buyer is all about. And when you challenge your sales rep, do you know the economic buyer? They're going to say yes. What's his title? What's her title? And I'm going to tell you, if it doesn't have a C in the title, it's not a CIO, not a CFO, not a CEO, not a CHRO. Really? A director, especially if they say director. Yeah, the director of maintenance is going to do this. A director? I've never known a director at any company in the world that has the ability to move money from one budget to another. They spend money against a budget. They don't rearrange budgets. They are empowered to spend within their budget. They're not empowered to spend somebody else's budget. That takes a VP, that takes a C. And your salespeople need to be really good at asking for that and making that happen. So, no economic buyer. It's just a field in the CRM system. You got to fill it in. You got to put a name there. No economic buyer. Thing that just pops right out. Bob Hope. Come on, Bob. 138 deals in your pipeline that don't have an economic buyer. Maybe that's why you're having a problem getting deals closed. I got to work with Bob to help him get better at that. Now, look over at Gilda over on the left-hand side. Look at Dean Martin, man, the guy who couldn't show up for work for a week earlier on in this presentation. Dean Martin, 0.2% of his deals. So small you can barely see it on the chart, on the pie chart here. You know, he's doing a great job of finding the economic buyer and having an economic buyer meeting. He's doing a fantastic job. Bob is not. What is Dean doing right and Bob's not doing? Right? So you need to help Bob. You need help Bing. You need to really help Sydney and Betty, because it just pops right out, right? Those are the 4 reps that are just plain struggling. And maybe Farah too. Because she's got a pretty big number as well. In fact, Farah's number is bigger than Bing. So I'll just say the top 5. So of your 11 salespeople, 5 of them are doing a really good job of this. And 6 are doing a really good job and 5 of them aren't. So do you need to spend more time working with them on doing some exercises? Kevin and I can help you. If you're having that problem, Kevin and I can help you with that, right? Have us come in, we'll do some training, we'll do some sessions, we'll help them through that process. No decision criteria. So after no economic buyer, no decision criteria is the biggest reason the deals don't close. So amateur salespeople, these are people that we deal with all the time. The amateur salespeople are people that don't take sales as a career, as a profession, they're proud of it. They don't naturally like to ask their prospect, how are you going to make your decision to buy? The decision criteria is how the prospect is going to grade your product and decide it is the winning solution. Think of it as a student in school. And I think just looking at the people on this list, the pictures that I see, the images of some of the people that I see, most of you have one time probably had kids. Some of you, just by the amount of gray hair, just like me, probably don't have kids in school anymore. But think about it when you had your kid in school. And they came through and they said, what is the grading scale? They asked that question to begin the year, begin the semester. What's the grading scale that's going to be happening? Now, understand in sales, it's pass fail. It's win loss. We don't get a partial grade. You know, C doesn't cut it. It's either you won or you lost. There's no closest grad I'm just going to skip that whole thing because I just lost it. I apologize. But it's pass fail. What constitutes in this class, in this endeavor, a passing grade? By the way, it's grenades. I couldn't think of the word. Most only counts from grenades. Would you be happy if a teacher or your child said, I will let you know at the end of the semester if you passed. I'm not going to tell you what you need to score on any test. And by the way, in this class, the class of 25, 30 kids in the class, only one of you is going to pass. But I'm not going to tell you how. I'm going to tell you at the end of the process who's going to pass and which one of you. And the other 30 of you, yeah, you just failed. Sorry. But I'm not going to tell you how. Would you be happy with that? But that's what you let your salespeople do. You let your salespeople do that all the time. So what is the decision criteria? It's simply a field in the CRM system that you can look at any time you want to. They have to write it down. And if they don't write it down, you can immediately flag that. You can read the ones that are there to see if they're logical, but that's what your VP of sales should be doing. But you should be immediately flagging the ones that don't have any decision criteria. Now, maybe you don't flag this in the scoping stage or the discovery stage, because that may be a little bit too early. But by the time you get to the economic buyer, you would better know what the decision criteria is, because that's the question you're going to ask the economic buyer. Mr. Economic Buyer, you say you want 25% reduction. How are you going to prove that out? Are you okay with the case study or the case that the rest of the team, the project manager that you put in charge, are you okay with how they are going to go through this process to decide that 25% can actually be achieved if you buy my product? Are you okay with that? Have you signed off on that? If he says no, then stop. If he says yes, now we have something to go back to him when it slows down later in the sales process. Once again, we look, Bob Hope, not so good. Bing Crosby, not so good. Something just fell on the floor. Sorry if that made some noise. Betty White, not so good. Got some problems with Betty. Got some problems with Sydney. Sydney wasn't a problem before. He doesn't like decision criteria. Ruby, she wasn't a problem either. But you can see Gilda, man, she's still knocking it out. Farah does better in this one than she did actually economic buyer. So maybe she needs a little help on economic buyer discussions. Number 10, coming down to the end here. This is the easiest thing to track in your opportunities and is probably the most important. I've alluded to it a couple of times now. If you truly don't know this information, then you just don't have a deal. I would just be blunt. You don't have a deal. If you can't say, Mr. Prospect, what do you want to accomplish when you buy my product? If you can't answer that question, if your salesperson can't answer that question, and if it can't be, they want to go faster. What is that? No economic buyer ever funded a project because he said it wants to go faster. Well, is 1% fast enough? 99% of what it was before. Is that good enough? Is that enough of a payback, Mr. Economic Buyer? Oh, it's not. Oh, sorry, I wasted all my time working on that opportunity that we didn't have a proper decision criteria and metrics to hit, right? So what makes sense in your business? I don't know. I have to talk to you about that. But what do you want to accomplish? Write it down in the CRM system. If it's not there, the CEO flags it. If it is there, the VP of sales is going to be reading those and working with their sales reps on a regular basis to make sure that it's there. When you don't have a metric, when you have a metric, it's a lot easier to ask them about their decision criteria. How are you going to prove that that metric that you want to hit is going to actually do it? And if you have all that information, that economic buyer meeting is actually easy to get. Because it really is. If I do this and we hit this, Mr. Economic Buyer, you agree you're going to buy, right? You're going to open up the budget and make that happen. Put the answer in your CRM, track that it's there. Your sales VP is going to make sure that it's actually it. Makes sense. You, as the CEO of the company, you're going to track to make sure it's not empty. And then we look and we see the same problem people. Surprise, surprise. That's how I created the data. But we see the same problem people and the same people that are knocking it out, right? Sydney's not doing very good at this. Betty is really struggling. Bob is struggling at this. Bing is struggling. Interesting. If you remember, Bob had the biggest pipeline. You got to work on Bob. Something's happening with Bob. His deals aren't, he's got a lot of deals, but he's not got a lot of deals that have a lot of information. Maybe, just maybe, Bob doesn't like to put things into a CRM system. And maybe you got to incent him a little bit to get that stuff filled in, right? So maybe that's a sales management problem. And you should be talking to your VP of sales is, why has Bob got all these deals? He's bringing in revenue, but he never updates the CRM system. Hey, come on, VP of sales. If it's Kevin, you say, hey, Kevin, do your job, bud, right? Okay.
Yeah. We got a bunch of questions coming in chat. I want to make sure I carve out some time.
I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one fast because this is the one. This is the money chart, the money losing and analytic, the one you should never do as a CEO. The number of dials or the number of phone calls. Don't ever do it. I'm going to tell you why. You're going to lose money if you do it. Why is the number of dials so bad? The money losing the analytic. First of all, you don't want to micromanage your salespeople. That's what your VP is for. And you don't even want to do that. Set expectations on that customer interaction hours. That's the very first one. And the meetings will just happen. Meetings are what matter, not dials. Who cares about the dials? What you want is meetings. So track that. Dials are expensive. Since COVID, professional SDR, sales development resource, sales development representative teams now expect between 0.5 and 1.5% connection rate. Nobody's home. Everybody's got their cell phone. Nobody sits at the same desk day in and day out. All the customers are hoteling it now. With 25 dials per day, which is about an hour's worth of work per day for every rep, that means about one conversation per week. That turns into, by the time you do the math and how it all works out, that's about 5 or 6 deals or true opportunities per year. It takes an hour to make 25 calls, and you're going to get these slides, so I'm going to do this really fast. It essentially means you're going to spend $250,000 to get 6 leads. It's just a bad way to get leads. Don't do it. Your sales manager, your VP of sales, those people that are hurting, Betty, for one, should put her on performance improvement plan. Let's get her better. Let's help her out. We're going to track hers because we want to make sure she's doing the right things. The people that are hitting it, they're doing really well. No, just watch their customer interaction hours. That's all you need to do. Stop doing that. Kevin and I can help you build out what that detailed conversation looks like, what the sales process is that would actually figure that out. And we'll help you get those leads. If you say, well, how do I get leads if my sales guys aren't calling? There's ways to get that done. And Kevin and I can help you fill that out. Questions as I leave this?
Yeah, got a few here. Jim, I think that we touched on the how to get to the tactical things to get to the economic buyer question. Please hit us up again if there's a deeper dive you want to do on that. Got one here from Jim. I have a great company that needs to grow. I have neither a marketing person or salespeople. So we're talking about a CEO who is the head cook and the bottle washer. What is the logical progression for my budget? Lead gen, sales, salespeople, CRM. Kind of tease that out, and then also touch on how many RFPs or should you entertain RFPs in your pipeline, kind of in that same discussion.
Great. First of all, I think RFPs are terrible if you don't know the customer. Just walk away from them. So I'll just do that one really fast, and I'm going to be quick. The first thing you need to buy is a CRM system, right? You need to have something, and they're not very expensive. But the very first thing you need to invest in is a CRM system because you need to know what's going on. The next thing you start working on is a combination of marketing, and I would actually do an inside salesperson. I would actually outsource that though. There's a variety of firms that are local, that are across the country. Kevin and I have this long list of people that we can refer to you on that. So I would actually do an outsourced inside salesperson. It's kind of a weird way to say that, but that's what I would do. Working on that CRM system that you have. And then I would introduce you to some really good marketing people, maybe not chief marketing officer kind of people, maybe a step below that. But there's some really good marketing people. There's a couple of them that are actually on this presentation today. I would introduce you to one of those because you want to factor your budget a little bit and pay for a part of their time, a part of their expertise, but not a full-time on that. And there's some great people. Some of them are on this call. bunch of them signed up and probably didn't show up, but we have some great people we can introduce you to. It's not really Kevin and I. Kevin may be more than me, but definitely not me. I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not going to give you any assistance there. But the first thing I do, CRM system, SDR, get some marketing help from one of these outsourced experts, and I'm going to make that go fast. And that's all I'll say.
Good. Pivoting the next question, this is for someone who has a VP of sales. How do you get them to focus on the analytics? When they're not currently focusing on the analytics, how do you pivot that ship?
Great question. And I'd be like, really, you need help with that? So look, you sit down every week and you say, Joe, Kevin, you say Kevin's your VP of sales, right? Kevin, every week we're going to sit down Monday morning, 8:30 a.m. We're going to sit down. We're going to walk through these analytics. Tell me about this problem. I'm looking at your analytics. This is what I'm seeing. Tell me about it, right? You do that for 2 or 3 weeks, a month. And if Kevin doesn't catch on, and Kevin does, because Kevin's going to lead the conversation. So I'm just joking here a little bit. But if Kevin doesn't participate in that conversation, if he's not ready after 3 or 4 weeks, then give Sean and Kevin, the real Kevin and the real Sean, a call, because you need help with that guy. In fact, in a slide or two here, I'm going to talk to you about how you can get some help and some training for that person and make that person a better sales leader, sales manager. Kevin, anything else?
A couple more here, and we're also at the bottom of the hour, so I expect people are going to need to start jumping off. So we appreciate your time. For those of you who have to jump off, let's see here. Follow up on the RFPs. For businesses that are B2B who are reliant on public RFPs, should they change their model if they don't know the customer?
Yes. Yeah. RFPs are just shots in the dark, right? You're going to do a lot of work and you're not going to know the economic buyer. You're not going to know what the decision criteria is. They'll describe a little bit in the RFP, but they'll lie. You really need to think about a different market. RFPs are great if you have a lot of money, you have a lot of bandwidth, you have a lot of processes. RFPs are great for selling to the US government or state governments or whatever. However, the companies that win those deals tend to be really, really big. Unless you're going in with an SBIR, a Small Business Innovative Research grant, those are great. And if your company needs help with SBIRs, I know somebody that helps in that area specifically. A great way to get started, get funding for a small company. Let's do some SBIR work. And I'll introduce you to Sam, who is an expert in helping companies with that.
Good. All right. We got some people saying, good job. Let's see here. Here we go. This is direct on specifically moving people through a sales process. Do you condone placing gates in the funnel process that do not permit an opportunity to progress to the next phase unless a certain condition has been met?
Absolutely. And that's the biggest reason why people don't do it, is because it's too easy to move it. I can move that deal and there's no repercussions and nobody knows the difference, right? So absolutely. Salespeople have to be able to answer questions. This is what I know. It doesn't get to the next stage. In other words, one of my steps is always the economic buyer meeting. Well, guess what? You have to know the economic buyer. You have to have a name in that field in order to go on. Now you can put Joe into that field and it'll pass my tests, right? There's a name there. It'll pass that test. It may not be real. That's where your VP of sales has to be looking at that data and say, wait a sec, this one's not real. Come on now. And by the way, when I made up the analytics for this one, I took that information out just so it made it more obvious what was going on. But none of my deals would ever get past that test in real life. I just did it uniquely here.
Fantastic. Got one more question here. I missed this one. Pardon me, Susan. Do you layer on a percent discounted on the days to close analysis to determine if higher discounting is driving shorter close time frames, indicating a problem?
Yeah, so the question is yeah. I think I get it. I have done that before in the past, but I found that just in the analysis that I do is how long has that deal been in the pipeline to close is going to give you a really good indication what's going to do at a macro level. Now, I will tell you that I believe that you need to put rules in your organization. This is outside this webinar, outside the subject at least. You have to have rules in your organization. If you have 11 sales reps, they can only discount to a certain level, right? They have to have limits in that. They have to have approvals past that, and they have to have approvals past that, right? So if you don't have that discounting strategy built into your system, then you're making a mistake as well.
Agreed. Agreed. All right, we're dropping some people here, but let's press on here, Sean.
So while you're looking at that, I'm just going to quickly do the slide. It's been up for a little bit, so people have seen it. We're going to send you a questionnaire. We haven't done this in our previous webinars, and we think that this will help us get better and help to serve you better. So we're going to send you a questionnaire, and hopefully you'll fill it out, or survey. Hopefully you'll fill it and give us some feedback. Please share these future webinars that we're going to do on LinkedIn. It helps us build a better audience and makes it more fun for us. And also, please allow us to reference this. If you learned something today and said, wow, Sean said something was really cool, let's put it out on LinkedIn, tag myself, tag Kevin, and say, Sean and Kevin, they taught me this thing. It was really good. Everybody should go talk to Sean and Kevin. That'd be great for us. It helps us. And so we hope that you'll do that. Or at least please mention on LinkedIn that you received value by going to this event. And I'll leave this one up for everybody to see if there's any other questions while people look at this one. Kevin?
Fantastic. Oh, next up, next month, excited to invite you all back to how to basically run a better sales meeting, right? The idea is that time kills deals, right? Sean just alluded to this with his Betty White examples, but meeting issues that are actually slowing down your sales cycle. So I'd like to invite anyone, yourself and people on your team that have a quota responsibility, if they need to drive urgency to the revenue line, we're going to unpack that and talk about the 5 issues that it could be slowing you down and how to solve them. So look forward to seeing you on May 26th, this same time slot, 8:30 to 9:30, and we'll see you there with we're going to try this one on LinkedIn Live, though. We're going to give that a run.
Great. Yeah, that way you don't have to sign up twice, which is kind of a pain. So sorry about that. Right. So also this September, and I alluded to this a little bit because there was some questions that Kevin, that you asked from the chat about how do you manage your sales manager, right? So you hopefully you don't have to manage your sales manager, but the fact of the matter that you might have to. But how do they know how to be a good sales leader? Well, you know what? There's very few classes out there that actually teach this. In Sales Acceleration, Kevin and I and our peers across Sales Acceleration have this great class. It's called the Certified Sales Leader. I've had multiple people go through the class. I've taught the class a couple of times. I won't be teaching the class, though, that's going to be in September, but it's going to be a great event. It will probably be on site, probably in the Columbus area, so not very far from where most of you on this list, on this webinar, can get to fairly easily. Think about going to this class. It's fantastic. It's 1 day long or 1 week long, 3.5 days, 4 days long. Fantastic class. It's great reviews. There's a test at the end. So literally you send your sales manager there and he comes back and he failed the test. Well, you got a problem, bud, right? So there's a test at the end. I'll tell you a secret. Everybody passes the test at least by the 2nd try. So we let you do a couple tries. So I'm not going to do the about Sean or the about Kevin because we're way out of time, and I apologize. And thank you for everybody that stuck around a little longer. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for all this. We will be sending out a follow-up. Please answer. It will only be a few questions, but please give us some feedback. It'll help us make this better. And if your feedback is that, Sean, you talk too long, you talk too much, that's fair. I'll take that. I'll take that hit. Thank you very much. We can open it up for conversation. I don't know how many are still on, but I'll stay on until everybody drops.
We've still got about 13 on. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.